What's up, Gibbs? It's Guys. Let's talk about some compression techniques. My goal with this video is to make the video that I wish I had 13 years ago when I started making music. I just wish I had a video I can reference back to on all the fundamentals of compression. As we all know, compression is one of the hardest things to grasp about mixing. I'm also going to show you a couple things that if you're kind of new to it, there's a couple things that you can do that will help you when you can't hear compression yet. Because it's one thing to understand compression, it's another thing to hear compression. That's one thing that just takes time and practice. The more you use it, the better you'll hear it, and I'll show you those things as well. Now, I'm not a compression guru. I'm not claiming to be. These are just some fundamental things, some techniques that are used in almost every mix you'll do, and you'll understand why you're using it, how to use it, what settings to use, all that stuff by the end of this video. If you're experienced and you have compression knowledge and you hear that I don't say something that I should have said that's going to help out other people that are coming into this space and are still trying to learn, then throw them in the comments, because I want this to be an inclusive thing where we're all kind of like learning and growing from each other. All right, with that said, well, let's get on into it. The first thing I want to say is know why you're using what you're using. All right, know the why before the what. If you don't know why you're using something, then what you're using doesn't matter at all. All right, you could have the best compressor in the world, but if you use it for the wrong reasons, it's not going to end up, you're not going to get the result you want. We've all fallen into the YouTube mixing trap where we see someone we look up to do something and we feel like we have to do that in every single mix. No, there's specific purposes for every single thing you do or every single tool you use. We need to understand why we're using what we're using, or what we're using is useless. All right, so let's go over the three main reasons why you would use compression in the first place. Okay, the first one is glue. The second one is enhance, and the third is to balance. When we're talking about glue compression, think of it like this. This is an analogy that I've used to explain it to a couple people, and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. So I guess I'll just share it with you. So imagine, cruising down the street, and you're 6'4", with all your friends. Let's say you and a few friends, and you're all singing, but you're all singing different songs. And then someone turns on the radio. Someone has a brilliant idea to turn on the radio. They turn it on. Now there's a song playing. Now you all have the same song to sing, right? Now you're all singing just like you were, but you're all singing the same song now. Now there's a sense of togetherness. You're singing as a cohesive unit, whereas before it was kind of sporadic. You might have sounded good by yourselves, but you're all singing something different, and it just sounds kind of weird, a little bit crazy, sporadic, and just too much. But someone turned on the radio, and now you're singing the same song. You might be singing in your own tonalities and pitches and harmonies and stuff, but you're singing the same thing, and now there's a sense of togetherness. So think of the compressor as the radio. So you have all your instruments or a group of vocals or something like that, and they're all kind of doing their own thing, but then you put that glue compressor on there, and now it kind of sucks it in, and now it's like there's a sense of togetherness, and it feels like one unit at that point, okay? That's glue. The second one, enhancement, that's more of like a creative, you're trying to use a compressor as a creative tool, okay? You hear me say this all the time. If it sounds good, it is good. This is where you get to use compression as a technique to add your own little flair, or maybe create some groove, or do something that to a specific instrument or group of instruments, or something that makes it just kind of as a creative purpose to make it sound cool, like more colorful or something like that. The third one is balance. Balance, really all that is, it's pretty straightforward. We're just balancing things out. There's something called dynamic range, which we'll talk about in a second. But your dynamic range is your loudest part, taking your loudest part and your quietest part, and the difference in loudness between those two things is your dynamic range. What you're doing when you're trying to balance is just bring those things a little bit closer together so it sounds more consistent. right? Sounds more balanced. All right, so we talked about dynamic range for a second. We'll go into more depth on that. Pretty much your dynamics is what a compressor is manipulating in the first place, okay? But when we're talking dynamic range, remember loudest part versus the quietest part? That is your dynamic range. So if it's the loudest part is, let's say, 0 dB and the quietest part is negative 10 dB, then your dynamic range is 10 dBs. So there's 3 types of dynamics. There might be more, but what I know is there's 3. So there's your musical dynamics, your macro dynamics, and your micro dynamics. Let's say, so let's just say this is your song. This right here would be your musical dynamics, the whole song, right? So let's just pretend like this was the loudest part of your song and this was the quietest part of your song, okay? The dynamic range between the loudest part of the song, more global, and the quietest is your musical dynamics. Your macro dynamics would be, you see this right here? This is like a whole phrase or a performance of an instrument. Like let's say the whole performance in this verse of the guitar would be the loudest versus the quietest part of that whole performance in that verse. Or let's say it's a vocal. So like this is a vocal. This whole phrase right here, this whole phrase would be the macro dynamics. Let's say this was the loudest part and this was the quietest part. That would be your macro dynamics. Your micro dynamics would be like a single word or a single note played. So let's say that this right here was just one word. The dynamics, the dynamic range of this one word is your microdynamics. Okay, so let's move on to a couple things. Remember at the beginning I said there's a couple little tools that you can use to help you out in the beginning before you can actually hear compression. So let's go over a couple of those things right now. And this is specific to Logic when it comes to how to get to these settings. All right. I know probably you can figure it out in any DAW, but this is how you get to it in Logic. Okay. And the first thing we're going to do is change. You see this up here, the timestamp. All right. These last 3 are milliseconds. If you've seen any compressor, the settings, we're manipulating in milliseconds. So like the attack and release times are in milliseconds. All right, so we want to change this to milliseconds. It's not default that way. So the way to change it into that is go to Logic Pro settings. Let's go general. We'll go to view. And this right here, display time as, we want to, I think it'll be like one of these SMPTE, maybe samples or something as a default, but we want to change it to the one that says milliseconds. All right. Now that will display the milliseconds, and I'll show you why that's important. And then the next thing we need to do is go to actually Logic Pro settings again, go to audio, general, and go to playback pre-roll. That is by default going to be checked. Uncheck that. The reason why is when you select, let's go right here. When you select, you hold command on your keyboard, you hold command down, it'll turn into this little marquee tool. When you select something to listen to, it's going to pre-roll, meaning start a little bit back instead of right there on the line if that thing is checked. We want to take that off because we want it to start right where I put it. See how it started right there? And the reason why we want that is because when we are checking our attack and release times, or when we're trying to figure out what our attack and release times are going to be, if we're kind of confused, we can go here. Let's go to like a kick or something. It's a little bit easier to. So if you go to this kick, go to this snare, actually. Sorry. Depending on what type of compression that you're trying to do to, let's say, this snare, if I want some punchy compression, then obviously I want it to compress at a certain position on this piece of audio here, this snare. The reason why we want to put that milliseconds up here on there is because when we take our playhead and we start here, look, it's at 150 right now. And let's say we want to know exactly how many milliseconds it is from here all the way to here. Then we're going to take it. It started at 8,150. Now it's at 8,168. So that was 18 milliseconds. That's going to be important here in just a minute. If I highlight this with my marquee tool and I want to know how loud this part is versus, let's say, this part, I need it to have no pre-roll when I play this part. So if I want to know how loud this is, if I look down here, it'll tell me, watch. It's -18. This part is -10. So the dynamic range of this snare from here, from this point versus this point was 8 dB. Okay, that's going to be important again here in a little bit when we go over some more things in our different types of compression. All right, so let's talk about the compressor that is stock to Logic that you have access to. Okay, I'm about to save you a ton of money right now. You have access to this compressor here. If you're kind of new and you don't realize that what this is, the information that I'm about to give you is going to save you a bunch of money, and it's going to open your eyes to, wow, I have access to a lot of things I didn't know I had access to. So these right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 compressors. This is 7 compressors in one compressor, okay? But these last 6 are emulations of the most popular and glorified compressors that's ever been made. Okay, when you watch another YouTube video and you see them using this compressor, that compressor, whatever, make sure it's not one of these emulated ones, because you're going to go off and spend $150 on each one and wonder why, where all your money went, because you just done spent it on all these 6 compressors when you didn't have to. Okay, yes, they're emulations, but all plugins are emulations of real hardware, but also they're so close that it really doesn't matter. All that matters is how you use it. If you know how to use it, why you're using it, then it doesn't matter. All right, don't spend a bunch of money on this stuff when you got it right here. All right, so this one, Platinum Digital, is a Logic specific plugin. Okay, it is supposed to be completely colorless, right? Just fully transparent. And this is Logic's compressor. This Studio VCA, this is an emulation of the Focusrite Red 3 compressor, very popular. This is an emulation of the 1176 Blackie, might be one of, if not the most popular compressor on the planet. This is the emulation of the DBX 160. This is the SSL G-Bus compressor. Okay, so you got an awesome bus compressor right here. The most famous mixed bus compressor ever made. The vintage FET is the 1176 silver face. It's an 1176. I think it's the silver face. This is the LA2A. All right, this is probably the most famous vocal compressor on the planet. So you have all this at your disposal. All right, don't go spend a bunch of money. Okay, let's go. I'm going to show you one more thing. I'm sorry it's taking a long time, but this is information that I wish I had when I first started. So this is I'm gonna share it to you. Okay, use this video as a reference. All right, like it, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff, so you can reference back to it, or maybe create a playlist. I have a playlist on YouTube where any video that I see that I know, like, hey, that's good stuff, I know I'm gonna reference it later. I have a reference playlist where I'd throw all those videos into, so I can just go to that playlist, find it, because we've all done it. It's happened to all of us, where we see something, we're like, oh, that's great, and then we forget about it because we didn't like it, or we didn't put it in a playlist to reference back to, and then it's lost forever because we forget who did it and whatever. If this is one of those videos for you, then like it at least, so it's in your liked videos, and you can reference back to it. What we're about to go over right now is how to stage your compressor for any type of compression, but you can stage a compressor to really dial in exactly the technique or style or sound that you want. And this is how we're gonna do it. All right, let me make this bigger. 125, baby. Your threshold, go all the way down. Ratio, all the way up. Makeup at 0. Release all the way down as fast as it goes. Attack, same thing. Leave the knee right there. Take off auto and turn off the auto gain as well. Your compressor is staged. The first thing we're gonna do is take the threshold. When we're playing a sound, we're gonna take the threshold, and depending on how much compression that we want the sound to have, we're gonna dial this in and get our needle moving to that point. So let's just solo this kick, and I'll show you. Let's say we want 10 dBs of compression on this kick. Okay, it's a little too much. That's about right. Okay. Now, depending on what style of compression that we're going to use, which we're going to go over here in just a minute, we're going to dial in our attack time, which I'll show you. And then we're going to dial in our release time. And then after that, we're going to take the ratio, bring it all the way down. Now it's back to normal because there's no compression. As we go up, it'll start compressing again. Okay, so the ratio, all it is I call it the feeling knob. All it is as we raise this up, we're just gonna listen, and once it gives you the right feeling of the intended purpose of the compression, once it gives you that feeling, then you stop. And then you look and see what it's at, 1.2. And then I close my eyes again, and I'm gonna raise it up a little bit more until it just doesn't sound right anymore. And I'm gonna stop, 1.6. And then I'm gonna go back down and just go between 1.6 and 1.2 until I find the perfect spot, and boom. So this is my feeling knob. So basically what it's saying is for every 1.4 dBs that goes past your threshold, we're only gonna let 1 dB through. There's a lot of math behind the ratio knob, and you're gonna hear a lot, oh, what's the right ratio? Doesn't matter. Like, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that, but it doesn't matter. You literally, it's the feeling knob. Just think of it as a feeling knob and you'll be fine. As long as these other settings are in the right spot, this is your feeling knob, and it'll give you the result that you want every time. And then obviously the makeup gain, let's say, okay, it's compressing at, -7 dBs. A lot of people will say, bump this up to 7 dBs. Just use your ears or use a loudness meter, which I'll show you here in a little bit. If you want to get exact, use a loudness meter, but just use your ears. So just turn it off. See, I bumped it up 7 dB because everybody else told me to, and it's too loud. So basically what we're trying to do is match the original loudness to the new loudness because it's compressing, which means it's getting quieter. So let's go on and off and use our ears. Okay, bring it down. That's about right. Okay, so all I needed to do was 4. Now we're at the same loudness. Okay, we want to make sure we're not letting a louder sound make us think that it's a better sound. We'll match the volume so you can actually hear, okay, is it actually better than the original or not? And that's what you're going to do with the makeup gain. All these other ones, all these other settings really don't matter too much. I'm not going to say they don't matter at all. We'll go through a few others throughout this video, but right now, fundamentally, they don't really matter. Those are the most important 5 knobs. Okay, now we're on to the types of compression. I'm going to put timestamps so you can jump forward if you want to, and it'll be easy to reference back to, but we're finally here, the types of compression, okay? Types, styles, techniques, whatever you want to say. The 4 types of compression we're going to talk about are, first, consistency. Second is punchy. Almost forgot. Third is groove. I'm going to say groovy because in this stew we say groovy, not groove. And the fourth one is parallel, also known as New York style compression. The first one, consistency style compression. Remember the 3 reasons why we would use compression: to glue things together, to enhance something, or to balance something. Consistency is mainly used for balance, but also used for glue, mainly for balance. I have this vocal, so basically I just threw a bunch of sounds in from Splice real fast just to like kind of build up a song structure so we would have something to mix in this video. Let's, this isn't me. Whoever made this sample, good on you. I picked it. Good job. You can save templates by pulling it down. Like once you get your settings the way you like them, you can go up here and then save as, and you can save it. So you notice I have a bunch of stuff saved. I saved it as vocal consistency. Consistency style compression on a vocal. We're gonna turn this off, so nothing's on right now. What we're gonna do is tame this a little bit just to balance it out a little bit. Our dynamic range with this vocal is -15, and our loudest part, it looks to be right here. About 5 dBs of dynamic range, at least in this. So when I'm going to my compressor, I want to shoot for probably around 5 dBs of compression, 3 to 5. Let's see what we're getting.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
Yeah, sitting anywhere between 4 and 5 dBs of compression. All right, I know, just based off knowing the dynamic range, that's going to kind of bring the loud parts and the quiet parts a little bit closer together to make it sound more consistent. So I'm going to go, I'm going to bring the compressor in and out just so you can hear what it's doing when it's on and when it's off.
Living like a king sitting on my throne.
Okay, when he says living like a king sitting on my throne, it kind of goes down on the ing sitting on my throne. And then when I turn it on, everything sounds like everything is at the same loudness and nothing's falling off and all that. So listen.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. Living like a king sitting on my throne.
Everything's consistent at that point. If we look at this waveform, this right here is the bounced. I just bounced it in place. I ran this vocal through the compressor and I bounced it in place. So this is after compression. This is before compression. All right. If you ever want to see what your compressor is actually doing, just bounce it in place with the compressor on. The waveform will show you exactly what that compressor is doing. Okay. Remember, waveform never lies. What we did was we tamed those dynamics with this compressor. Goodness. So now the quieter parts are a little bit fatter and they're a little bit closer to the loudest parts. Okay, so it sounds a lot more full. So this consistency compression allows you to balance things, and when you balance it, it makes it sound more full or fatter. So let's reverse engineer what I did just so you know how to do it for yourself. So let's look at this compressor again. With consistency, you want to attack fast. See, I have it on 0. And I used the 1176 Blackie because it's a really fast acting compressor. Like this one right here, it'll say that it's 0, but it's actually not 0 milliseconds. It's about 5 milliseconds. It's kind of deceitful. Whereas this 1176, these 1176s are really, really fast, and it is almost 0 milliseconds. Nothing will ever be 0, but it's the closest you're going to get. So I have very fast attack time, as fast as it'll go, and then I have a slow release because I want it to clamp down longer, meaning the compressor starts clamping down as fast as possible, but it rides out before it releases, so it clamps down longer, so you get more consistency. All right, more balance. So let's look at this through the milliseconds technique that I showed you. What I'm trying to do, what I like to do personally, is go from transient or peak to the next transient. All right, so here's the first transient right here. I want to go to this next transient. This is the next word. And then from this one to this one. All right, so let's see on average from each word what these are. So this is locking in our release time. Well, here's the first transient. Let's say it's about 650 to the next transient, which is 883. That's about 220, somewhere around there. Okay, from this transient to this, say 870. That's 970. That's about 150. So from this one to this one, what was it? 53 to here. That's about 195. I usually do about 4, and then I just take the average of those. So from this one to this one. Don't worry about that. That's just a random blip. It happens. So 250 to 450, somewhere around there. So about 210 on that one. I'd say we had a 150, a 195, a 200, and a 210. Let's say let's see what I put. 190. So it's about average, right? It's going to be somewhere around 200. Okay, so let's turn this one off and turn this one on. You see let's put that all the way down. Now it's not working at all. Remember how I showed you how to stage a compressor? This is the stage. Okay, nothing's happening right now. When I was looking at the dynamic range earlier, I noticed that, remember we had about, between the loudest and the quietest, we had about 5 dB. So I want to pull this threshold back until it is clamping down about 5 dB. Okay, that's going to completely balance it out.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
Okay, you see boy like popped up. That's fine. Don't worry about those crazy peaks. We want it to consistently hit somewhere around 5. So everything else is
living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
It's consistently about 5 dB. All right, and gain reduction is what that's showing you. So now we're gonna remember we want a really fast attack time. So I'm gonna leave that at 0, and let's start at 200. Because that's what we figured out, somewhere around here, right? So I'm going to go.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama.
Something to note is that release attack times on a vocal, a fast attack is somewhere between 0 and, I'd say an average for about everything almost is about 10 milliseconds, 0 to 10. Sometimes like a vocal, like a soft vocal, a rap vocal is going to be probably 0 to 10. A more singing melodic is going to be 0 to 20. A fast release time is anything under like 100. So this is going to be a slow release. Let's start at like 100, and then we'll go past 200 just to make sure it doesn't sound better.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone.
Okay, do you notice that? It kind of, all of a sudden, it got kind of like, it went like almost, I don't know how to explain it in words, but it like kind of sucked in, and it's just got more consistent, like right about there. So listen for it.
Making money move, they call me a rolling stone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a rolling stone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne.
Right there.
You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
Okay, let's watch this needle.
King sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama.
I'm going to put this back at 0, and then you're going to see how much range this needle has. And then when I raise it up, you'll notice that it actually kind of sits around, that range gets smaller because it's getting more balanced.
Living like a king, sitting
Look how
on
wild
my
it's
throne.
going.
You don't want no drama, leave
And then
that
I go
boy
up
alone.
to
Living like a king, sitting on
where
my
I had it.
throne.
Now it'll sit around kind of within probably 3 or 4 dBs of each other.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne.
Okay, as before.
Living like a king,
Look
sitting
how wild
on
it
my
is.
throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
Look at that, it's sitting right there. So doing this again, I would probably put it at about 210 because it's sitting right around here mostly. Whereas before it was wild before we set this release. Okay, let's touch it with the feeling knob. Okay, so bring it all the way down. It's doing nothing. I'm going to slowly raise it up until it feels right. I'm going to look at it. What is it on? Close my eyes again. Slowly raise it up until I don't like it anymore. Stop, look at it. And then with my eyes open, I'm going to just kind of go raise it back and forth between those two numbers until it really feels right. Okay? So close my eyes.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
I like that.
Living like
1.2. So it's barely even, when you get these set right, you're going to learn that all these ratios that you're hearing kind of don't matter. All right, so I can hear it working already right here. Let's see how much it's working.
Living like a king, sitting on.
Before, it's not working at all.
Sitting on my throne.
Barely working.
You don't want no drama,
right there. I started hearing it work. Okay, it doesn't sound good yet, but I could just hear it work. All right.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave.
I like that. So 1.6. Okay, let's keep going up.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
That's too much for me.
Living like a king, sitting.
That's just too much. You see that? That's too much. So 2.4 to 1.6. I'm going to go between there and see what I like the best.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
I like that.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
I think I like the 1.8. 1.8. It's about that -5 that I wanted. Maybe -6. But this is where I like it. I like it set right here. Let's compare my second time going through this, showing you guys, to this first time. Actually, first we got to check the makeup gain. So let's turn it off and match the loudness.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne.
Okay, we need to raise this.
You don't want no.
Holy crap, I'm sorry. That's this is my issue with you, Logic. All right? I don't know what it is with you mother luckas, but this makeup knob will just randomly, you'll click it, sometimes it'll just randomly just go out of this world, just freaking all the way up, baby. And I'm like, what is wrong with it? That is a bug that y'all gotta fix, dog. Okay, I thought it was probably about 1 dB.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. Living like a king. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. Living like a king. Living like a king, sitting.
That's pretty close. So let's compare. So we got a ratio of 1.5 to begin with the first time I went through it. Now it's at 1.8. Threshold was at -19. This time it's at -16. 0, 0. Release 210 now. And it was 190. The makeup gain was 3.5. And now it's 2.5. It's pretty close, right? That's how you get a consistent sound using a compressor for consistency style compression. You're trying to fatten things up, make it sound better. Now, going back to when I mentioned the serial compression or series compression, you'll hear that a lot. You're going to use multiple compressors in series with each other. So a lot of times I like to use the two-way. Remember, you have access to that. I actually have the real one, and I got it before I even knew that I had access to it. So you're welcome. Now you don't have to spend money on it. But I have this right here that I could have used. But what I normally do, where am I at? Okay. With vocals, the two-way, I will put two of those, the exact same settings, in series with each other, and I will put them right after each other. So I'm going to turn this on and off while I play it, and you'll see that it just adds a little more fatness to the vocals, okay? This is with one compressor.
Living like a king sitting on my throne.
Okay, this is with two. I'm going to go in and out. So off.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
Now we got to be careful of the loudness levels. We don't want loudness to deceive us. So let's turn it both of them off and both of them on just to match the gain.
Living like a king sitting on. Living like a king sitting on
So
my
it's
throne.
too loud. So what I would do, oh, stupid. Let's make sure. I forgot to change it back. Okay, now let's check it.
Living like a king. Living like a king. Living like a king.
Okay, it's actually a little bit too quiet. So since this one is more gain, makeup gain, I'm going to boost this one another half. I would only do that if I was doing series compression like this. Let's see.
Living like a king sitting on. Living like a king.
Let's boost it one more. Okay.
Living like a king. Living like a king.
Okay, that's about right. So now I'm going to go in and out, turn this one on, go in and out with the second compressor, just so you can hear the difference between one compressor and two compressors using series compression.
Living like a king sitting on. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne.
See how it got a little bit fatter?
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
Just a little bit fatter. Remember, little moves go a long way when they're stacked up over time. In mixing, you can do whatever you want, but I highly advise you to not make major, and this is not just in compression, this is everything, all mixing moves. Do not make major moves with any mixing move, okay? We want little enhancements, because those little enhancements go a long way. By the end of the mix, it's a major enhancement, right, in itself, because of all these little things piled up and made one big, impact. Just make little enhancements over time. It'll sound great, okay? Now we'll move on to the second type of compression, which is punchy. Punchy compression is probably on drums the most used that I've seen and that I use. We want to add a little more snap to a snare or more punch to a kick or something like that. This is something we can use to bring that to life. So this would fall under what reason? The enhancement. This is where we're adding color, adding texture, doing whatever we want creatively to add our own flair or whatever. Or if a kick is just kind of more thuddy and we want it more punchy so it punches through the mix a little bit more, this is something we can use for that. All right, so I actually put it on the snare and the kick. Can you see that? Yes. Okay, so let's look at it. I want to point something out real quick. If you have ever heard of ADSR, which stands for Attack, Decay, Sustain, Release, it's a sound design term But if you've ever heard of that, what that means is, if you didn't know, first is attack, right? So the attack of the sound going up to the top of the transient, that's the attack. When it comes back down off the transient, that's the decay. So this, obviously this kick, because it's squashed, it doesn't even have a decay. So that's actually what we're going to create with this punchy compression. We're going to create some decay off of that transient. And then the sustain is how long that note is played before, see this right here, it starts falling off. This is the release, before it starts releasing the sound. This doesn't have a decay. And the reason it sounds thuddy is because it doesn't have a decay. We're going to create that. All right, so what we want to do, if we're using the millisecond method, I'm going to take this playhead. If I start here, 928, and I want the transient to come through, let's say I want that to be the transient. And then I want it to start clamping down after I let that attack through, because that's what the attack setting does. I want to create the transient, and then I want to create a decay. And what I usually do is I go all the way out to where it starts releasing. So I'll go from 942, 928 to 942. That is 14. So I'll go somewhere around 15 seconds on the attack, and then I want it to clamp down for 946 till about right there, because that's when it starts decaying, or releasing, sorry. 48, that's what it was, right? Yeah, 45 to, let's say like right there, 25. So that's about 70, 80, between 70 and 80, somewhere around there. I'm not good at math. Based off of the milliseconds that we just figured out, we were at 15, right? 15, and then we had let's go with 75. 77 is fine. Okay, well actually, first we need to do our threshold. Remember our method to finding the dynamic range. Here's the end here, okay? Negative 19 and a half. And the transient, negative 17. So really just a few dB. Or actually, what's this? Oh, that's the loudest part right there. So we're going to go off of that. Negative 9 to, let's say this one. That's like 13. So we can go all the way up to 10 dBs of compression and still get the sound we want. Pull back that threshold, attack down, release down, ratio all the way up, makeup gain 0. Okay, that's sitting right at 10. So I like that. This knee for some reason is always all the way down. Let's put it like in the middle. Let's listen to it. We're going to go up to negative 15. 15 milliseconds. Apologize. And what we're listening for, when you're using a compressor when you're using your ears, not the milliseconds, which is what you want to get to, what we're listening for is that punch from the transient. Once we'll hear the transient come through, like at a certain point when we're moving this knob, we'll actually hear, oh, that transient's coming through. So right now it sounds real squashed, right? It'll poke out here in a second. I hear it right there. So listen to the difference. I'm going to go to 0 to 16, to 0 to 16. Ready? Ooh, even 18. 18 I like better. All right, so it's coming through a little bit right there. So that means we're letting the transient through. What we're trying to do is we're letting this transient through, right? So about 18 milliseconds in, it starts clamping down. We want it to clamp down on this whole thing, so the most prominent part of this sound is that transient. Okay, that's what makes it sound punchy. Let's work this release. Okay, right there, we hit it almost perfectly. You started hearing just that transient, that punch. The thuddiness kind of went away. I'm going to go back and forth from 81 milliseconds to 0, or to 5 milliseconds. you can kind of hear more of a tail of it. It's barely there because the kick is such a short sound, but you can kind of hear the tail. And then when I bump it up to 81, it's very tight. It tightens up. That tail kind of goes away. When I say tail, it's kind of like I'm talking about the ring that rings out of the sound. Ready? See how tight that is? So let's work with our feeling knob. Bring it all the way down. Okay, now it's doing nothing. This is the original sound. We're gonna close our eyes. Go up till we like it. Oh, I can start hearing it already. So basically what I'm looking for, what I'm trying to hear, is when the tail, the ring out of that kick kind of goes away. That's what I'm looking for. So when I hear that, I'm going to stop. I can still kind of hear it. And if you don't have headphones on, you're probably not going to hear this, or listening to speakers. Right there, 1.9. Right there, 4.2. So I'm going to go in between 1.9 and 4.2. That's actually pretty big. I like that. Okay, the thuddiness came back. You notice that? .9. I like 2.9. Okay. 2.9. So we have these set up. So let's listen to before and after so we can get the match the loudness. Okay, we need to go way up. Let's say like 5. That's about the same. Okay. Remember, when we're mixing, we're rarely ever going to be listening to a sound by itself. So within the context of the whole mix, we want to hear everything together when we're making these mixing moves, because it's like, cool, if it sounds good on by itself, we want it to sound good in the whole mix, right? So we wouldn't be mixing like this. We'd be turn everything on, and then we would compare. Okay, let's look at the third style, and that is groove or groove compression. What we will use the groove compression for is to enhance something, to make it sound more groovy, or to glue things together, or the way I use it, for both. It's just going to glue things together on its own. So you might be using, like I use it on my drum bus because it sounds best on things that are rhythmic. Fast-paced guitar or a drum section or something like that that's real rhythmic, we would throw some groove compression on it. I mean, it would add some feeling to it, to where it seems like you'll be nodding your head, but then you kick that groove compression on, and then all of a sudden you start moving your body with it, because it just gives a certain feeling. I usually use it on my drum bus, and then I'll always use it on my mix bus. Okay, because that has every element in the song. It just adds a little more groove to the song. Actually, always on my drum bus and always on my mix bus, but you can use it on other things too. So let's look at the drum bus. So I use the SSL G-Bus compressor. So what we want to do, so this is our drums. We want to think of this as what's the most important sounds in our drums. Every mix is different. But in this mix, because there's not a lot, I just threw something together. The things that make the most impact or the kick, the snare, and the hats. So what we want to do is bring our threshold down, keep moving it up until the needle starts moving on each of those elements. The kick and the snare will make it go way high. That's fine as long as it's touching the hat. Okay, so let's turn this off and on, and then you can kind of get that groove feel. This is without it. Let me make this bigger. Turn it on. Where I can tell the most is the hats. It goes from like a to like a like it. The hats start moving a little bit. Okay, pay attention to the hats. So off. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like it's like a after I turn it on, whereas before it was like so off and on. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Also, listen for the relationship between the kick and the snare. They start grooving a little bit better together as a more cohesive unit. Because before you throw this compressor on, it sounds like the kick and the snare are individuals. And then you throw the compressor on, and now it sounds like they're part of a cohesive unit, like they're working together. It's subtle. But listen. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. And now turn it on. Living like a king sitting on my throne. It's almost like that kick kind of leads into the whole point is like a push and pull type of feeling. And that kick kind of feels like that kick's pushing you into the snare. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want. So it's like a boom boom kick. Boom, 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 kick. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Okay? Subtle move. Something we have not talked about. But it is the difference between great bus compression. And when you hear bus compression, all that's talking about is glue, okay? Groove is just the way that I use my glue compression. It's the way I get the result that I want. But when you hear glue compression and bus compression, it's the same thing, okay? Just different ways to say it. The kick and the snare are going to interact with your compressor the most. It's going to affect it probably the most in almost every mix. What we're going to do is obviously we're going to take the settings with the release, the attack and release. We don't want to mess with the transients. The transients give you the impact that you want. So we're going to skip over the transients. We're going to have a slow release or a slow attack. The release, we're going to have very, very fast. With groove, we just want to clamp down real quickly just to give that groove, that bounce. If we have it held on, if we have it clamped down for a long time, it's basically consistency compression at that point, and it's just kind of flattening everything out and squashing stuff. We just want it to touch. That's what adds the groove. Okay, so now we're going to move into the secret sauce of your groove and bus compression. So here it is. Sidechain, pop. This is the secret sauce. the Sega Soul. You know, I talked about the kick and the snare working together more cohesively, and this is where we get that. And we're going to turn it on high pass, same as a low cut. Well, I guess technically high pass and low cut are the same thing. But when we're talking about compression in compressors, it's not like an EQ where it's like cutting out the lows. It's just not paying attention to the lows. It's only paying attention to everything high pass, everything that's higher than what we set here. So I have set it at saying, hey, don't pay attention to anything under 174 hertz. And where I get that is I just close my eyes and then I put it at the bottom and I just raise it up until I feel that kick and that snare start working together. So it's kind of hard to just look at it and just look at it and then see, okay, the bass, or not the bass, the kick and the snare are impacting that compressor at the same. So basically, we kind of want that kick and that snare to be affecting the compressor at the same amount. Meaning, like, let's say the kick is at -5, we want the snare to be hitting at -5 as well. And sometimes the only way to get that done is to say, hey, compressor, ignore everything below whatever. Don't pay attention to the kick as much, because usually the kick is the one that affects the compressor the most in a lot of cases. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on to high pass, and then I'm just going to slowly raise this up until it just feels like the kick and the snare are working together.
Living like a king,
Is it on? Okay.
You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne.
I can hear it starting to work.
You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want
155.
no drama, leave that boy.
Just keep going up until it sounds bad.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
I don't like that. That's whoa. Now I'm going to kind of fluctuate between 155 and, what was it, 400 or something, and see what sounds the best.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
Ooh, 174 does sound good.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on my throne.
I think I like 185. All right, so we heard the hi-hats earlier, and they're definitely moving a lot more. Let's listen to the kick and snare again.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king, sitting on.
Boom, 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 boom. Whereas before it was just, they just sounded like individuals. Can't be an individual. This is a team effort.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like.
Okay, cool. So that's what we did. A slow attack, a fast release. The threshold in this mix, I wanted kick, snare, and hat. Those are the most important things in the drums that I wanted it to affect. Get it down to where it's hitting the quietest, important piece of your drums, and that's good. Ratio always is a feeling knob, okay? I know people are going to disagree with me, but it's just a feeling knob. Let's see if we need to do any makeup gain.
Living like a king, sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama.
I think it's good. Remember that sidechain, okay? That's the secret sauce on this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Okay, now we're on to the fourth type of compression. Parallel compression, aka what? New York style compression. This is going to add some, I guess, body to whatever sound, whatever you put it on. It'll add some thickness, some body, some character, some color. There's multiple ways of doing it. I'll tell you which way I like to do it the most, and then I'll also show you other ways to do it. But it looks like I put it on the drums, I put it on the vocals, and then the mix bus. what I'm trying to do, there's a couple ways to do this. Some people will use that consistency style of compression and then just hammer it. And then some people, like me, this is the way I do it, will use, hey, I'm just trying to attack the transients. I just want to take the transient down. Like, I don't want to mess with the body of the sound. I just want that transient to come down and match the body, which is that thick style compression. So basically we're using thick style compression to lead into the parallel compression, because like I said, consistency style compression and then like this thick style compression, either one you choose, you're going to hammer it. It's not going to be like regular compression. You're just going to hammer the crap out of it. In my case, I'm going to use the thick style compression. I'm just going to capture those transients and bring those down instead of everything. Watch how hard this is working. Hold on. Look at that. Like 20 dBs of gain reduction right there. Why am I doing that? The reason why is because I want to take out almost all the dynamics of that original drum sound. So this is the drum bus parallel. I'm going to take that same original drums sound, the signal, and it's basically a copy of that signal. I'm going to squash the crap out of it to where there's like almost no dynamics to it. And then I'm just going to blend that back in underneath the original drum sound, and it's going to like add body to the drums. Okay. So when I turn it on and off, listen to how much thicker or how much thicker and weighty the drums sound. This is without it. Remember, this was our groovy compression on the bus. Okay, I'm gonna kick it in. It adds a little bit of life to it, right? Some excitement. So parallel compression is just strictly, why we use it is enhancement, strictly enhancement. We're enhancing the sound. We're bringing some life into it. It just sounds more fun. Listen to the drums. Like, listen to the weight of the kick and the impact of the snare. So I'm gonna turn it off. Just focus on one thing at a time. Listen to the weight of the kick. It'll increase. It'll sound just more full. Without. On. Lost a little bit of life. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Now pay attention to the snare. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king. It almost just kind of dies just a little bit. Like the whole song just kind of dies just a little bit with this compressor off. We're trying to get like 20 dBs of compression. We're trying to smash it. Remember, we start with the ratio all the way up. Look how much. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. 20 to 30. We have the fastest attack time we can get because remember, we're just trying to take care of those transients. The release time is pretty quick because I only want to touch those transients. I don't want to touch the body of the sounds. I did a lot of makeup gain because obviously when you do that much compression, it gets real quiet because it's all that gain reduction. So we have to put a lot of makeup gain back into it. Living like a king sitting on my throne. So this is nothing. This is original. And let's dial this feeling knob in. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. Right there. 3.3. 3.3. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting. I don't like that. Okay. You don't want no drama, 8.3. I think 4.8. What was it at before? I forgot. It was somewhere around there, right? 4.8 is where I like it the most. I feel like it gives the song more life. Now, I did the same thing as I did on the other. I went to the sidechain, turned on the high pass, and look, see, let's see the difference between 174 and 185, I think is what it was. Remember I changed it on the other ones.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne.
I like 174. I showed you the style of compression and how to get there with the settings. Now, how to implement it, there's 3 different ways that I want to show you. You can do it through submixing with like VCAs and stuff. I don't personally do that, so I'm not going to show you, but that is one method. Okay, someone pointed that out in the comments when I did a parallel compression video, just like strictly on parallel compression. They were like, well, I do it this way, and it's like, that actually is a good way. I just don't use it, so I'm not going to show it. The first way, since I have everything set up already, what I'm going to do is set up a bus. So all you do is go to your buses. So I set up a bus, went to bus, and whatever bus you want to pick for it, I set it up to here. Your buses in Logic will be yellow by default. You can change that, but by default it's yellow. It will also put it at the end over here. What I want to do with my parallel buses is I always take it and I make it a track so it shows up on my actual session. When you first do it and you set the bus up, it'll be down here. All you got to do is right click in the gray area of the channel and create. Oh, shoot. Oh, I already did that. So like if I want to, which by the way, the VCA thing I was talking about, this is how you would create the VCA for it. I think it's because these are already tracks. One of the options would be create new track or create a track or something like that. And what that's going to do is take it from your mix board and put it onto your session to where it's an actual track you can look at on here. And once it's in here, then I can take it and I can move it to wherever I want. And what I do with my parallels is I always move the parallel to the end of what I'm using it for. So this is the drums. So I move it. You notice it's at the very end. Here's the drum bus. Here's all my drums. And it's at the very end of my drums. My vocal parallel is at the end of my vocals. My mix bus parallel is right after the mix bus. Just to keep things organized, that's how I like to do it. So if we created a bus, we would put the compressor on that bus. And this, you put it on output. See this mix here? This mix knob? I want it completely going through. We're not mixing it in with the mix knob. Okay, that's a different technique. We want it at 100%. Then what we want to do, make sure this is at 100%. If it's not, you can just hold Option and click on this, and it'll take it to 100%. So 0.0. That means that every bit of this drum parallel aux or send is going all into whatever I put it on, which in this case is my drum bus. Now that everything is set up, I'm going to take it all the way down, and then I'm going to mix it in. Okay, you'll notice that this is moving too, and that's part of setting up the group. Don't pay attention to that right now. All I'm going to do, just imagine that stays at 0, and I'm just going to take it all the way down, and I'm going to mix it in until it hits exactly how I want it. And then once I get it exactly how I want it, which I think it was at -19, then I can come up here and create a group. Obviously it's already created, but you would just create a new group. So I'd click new, and then I would name that group whatever the parallel is for, whatever I want to link it to. So I linked it to the drums, so I'm going to name it drums. I'll just show you. New. See how it comes down here? I'm going to name it, let's just say drummy. Enter. Oh, dummy. I put dummy. Ha ha ha. Now I can link whatever I want. So if I want to link this to this, I would just assign it to the dummy. Now these are grouped, meaning when I go to the settings I can tell it what I want it to link. So if I want to link the volume, meaning when I move this volume knob, this volume knob moves as well, then I would link the volume. If I want to link the mute button, meaning when I mute this one also mutes, I can do that. When I pan this one and I want this to also pan, I can link the pan. See what I'm saying? Okay, groups, I'm going to turn that off. I don't want it to mess with anything. I just wanted to show you how to start a new one. Once I get it in the position that I want it, it sounds good, I'm going to create that group. This one's drums. Then I'm going to open the settings and I'm going to link the volume. I don't want to link the mute button because if I want to mute the parallel, I don't want to mute the drum bus as well. So I don't do the mute, and I also don't do pan because it's parallel. You can on like vocals. If I pan vocals, that's cool. But on a vocal bus, you don't really want to do that. So just link the volume and automation. You can do that too. That way they're doing the same thing anytime you do something to one, it does it to the other. That's one way to do it. Okay. So I either do that one or another one I do if it's on like a single track, like a lead vocal. I don't do it on groups of things. You can, but what you would do is, let's say this compressor, I don't create a bus for it. I don't send it anywhere. This compressor is literally just on here. It's on the channel itself. I do all my settings and all that. And then I use the mix knob, which is just like this volume knob, how I got it where I wanted it. Same thing, bring it all the way down and just mix it into how you like it. Okay, I like it right there, and boom, you're done. The other way to do it is if I wanted to add parallel compression on, let's say, these hats, I would just create a new audio track, and I would copy and paste this down here. And then on this track, I would put the compressor and do my parallel compression settings. And then I would mix the volume knob of this actual track in to how I like it. So you can create a new track and do it on its own track and blend it in with the volume knob. You can put it on the actual track and just blend it in with the mix knob of the compressor. Or you can create an actual send or a bus of its own. Put the compressor on that bus, mix it in with the volume knob of that bus, and then link it through the group and do it that way. Okay, and there are your 4 styles or types of compression that you'll probably use the most. Remember, these are not the only ways. They're just some ways, some types of compression. There's many more types of compression. I just feel like these are the most fundamental. Remember, there's so much to know and learn about compression, and it's going to take a while to learn how to hear compression. But hopefully, some of these things I've shown you will actually help with that and will be some tools in your toolkit, in your tool belt. Remember to add this if you feel like it was of value based on how long this video is. If you're still watching it, you probably got value from it. But if you are, go ahead, create a reference playlist in YouTube, drop this in that, and then any other video that you feel like you can go back and reference and it'll be useful at some point in your life, drop those in there as well. But there's so much information in this one video that you will not remember everything that I talked about or you learned. It's just not possible after listening to it or watching it one time. So just drop this in that reference playlist, like it, make sure you subscribe so you see more of my videos. Let's finish this video out with listening to the before and after with all the different compression styles. Literally, there's only maybe 8 sounds, including the vocal, in this whole little track here, this whole song. We used all 4 types of compression. So let's do a before and after of this song and see what those little compression moves did and see if it brings it to life and sounds better. I hope it does, because that would be embarrassing if it didn't. All right, let's do that, and then we'll cut out of here. Okay, I've bounced it all down into a compressed version of the song and an uncompressed version of the song. If we take a look at the waveform, you can see the top one's compressed, the bottom one's uncompressed, okay? This is original before any compression. And remember, there's no EQ, there's no saturation, there's literally nothing but those 4 styles of compression on just a couple things, not even the whole song, not even on all of the instruments and sounds and stuff like that, just on a few things. We can see that the compressed version, through these transients, it's going to be more snappy. These transients are coming through on these kicks and snares and everything. It'll probably feel like it kind of opens up a little bit, is what I'm seeing on this waveform. So it's going to sound a little bit more open, but also more cohesive and glued together. So let's go with uncompressed first, and then I'm going to hit the solo button like this to A-B it, okay?
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a rolling stone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a rolling.
Let's put a loudness meter on there and make sure that it's the same loudness so we're not getting deceived. Because I can already tell, I don't know if you hear it, but it just sounds like one cohesive, like it actually sounds like it's a song, like everything belongs together in the compressed, and it actually kind of separates almost, but at the same time glues. Separates in the sense of like it feels more open. So watch the short-term LUFs here, and you'll notice they're sitting about the same volume.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
That's about the same, right? And we'll do sections, I guess. And then I'll kick in the compressed.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne.
So the compressed, it kind of like sucks together. The kicks out aren't overpowering the snare or the vocals or anything. Nothing's overpowering anything. It just sounds more consistent and level and balanced and just glued together. Just pay attention to how nothing is competing with each other. And then it kind of opens up a little bit, all right? So let's move to the next section. Let's go uncompressed first.
Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a rolling stone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a rolling stone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my.
You can hear like that, the boominess of like the 808s, and the kick is just kind of like overpowering everything on the uncompressed. And then with the compressed, nothing's overpowering anything. Everything seems kind of consistent. So uncompressed, a little too boomy and all that.
Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a rolling stone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money.
Yeah, see the snare comes out. The kick kind of quits competing with everything.
Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a rolling stone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone.
See how the vocals kind of like faded away a little bit when I turned the compressed off. So let's move on to the next section.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
And then also listen to the vocals, how some parts are like kind of fade away into the song a little bit and get lost almost. And then they come back and they get a little bit too loud, and there's no consistency there.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone.
Those vocals.
Living like a king.
Now compressed.
Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that boy alone. Living like a king sitting on my throne. You don't want no drama, leave that.
They're consistent all the way through. No part's louder than the other. Let's see what this is.
Ain't no competition. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move. Stone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a Rolling Stone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone. Making money move, they call me a Rolling Stone. Ain't no competition when I'm in my zone.
It just sounds tighter and like a whole unit. All right. And those were little tiny moves, but it made a real big difference. Like all those little compression moves on top of all the little EQ moves and little saturation moves and just everything that goes into a mix. All the little moves add up to a big result. Okay. That's enough talking. This video is so long and I appreciate you staying all the way through. I hope you learned something. And if you haven't yet, like this video, subscribe, comment. If there is something that you learned that you didn't know before, or I reminded you of something, or just whatever that is, throw it down in the comments. Say, hey, this was an eye-opener. Or if there's something that I didn't say that I should have said, throw that in there so people can learn. All right? Cool? Subscribe. Peace.